Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Lisa Desoy, and I am the Head of Skills here at the Mauritius Africa FinTech Hub. And I'm very pleased to welcome you to our webinar this afternoon on accelerating economic inclusion in Africa. Just before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping notes. We do encourage you to submit your questions to today's speakers. You can do that by using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. You should see a dialog box there, and using that, you can submit your questions to us for Anton and Mark to answer at the end of today's session. So, across the world, millions of people are excluded from interaction with traditional banking and finance structures. Getting financial services into the hands of those excluded is about developing accessible, affordable, and appropriate products and services. Digital payments are often seen as at the forefront of extending economic inclusion, serving a universal base need for transactions and acting as a gateway into the delivery of other financial services. In today's session, we are pleased to welcome two speakers from our member Ukheshe, who will be sharing their knowledge and insights of how digital payments are accelerating economic inclusion in Africa and what this means for SMEs on the continent. They will discuss the SME market in Africa and explore the impacts of COVID and the challenges faced by SMEs in adjusting to the payments landscape. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Mark Dankworth is President of Business Development in Africa at Ukheshe. Mark has more than 22 years of sales experience in the card and payments industry, with previous experience in retail and loyalty cards, banking cards, and other card-focused businesses across the continent. Prior to this, he was in corporate finance and was involved in the listing of a number of companies on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. I'd also like to welcome Anton. Anton Coertzen is the Chief Commercial Officer at Ukheshe Technologies. Originally trained in accounting at the University of Pretoria, Anton has held positions at Deloitte Consulting and MasterCard before shifting out of the corporate world to become CCO at Ukheshe. Over the course of his career, Anton has built up expertise in various areas, including tax planning and structure, financial management, project management, audit readiness, pricing strategies, country strategies, partnership growth, and revenue turnaround and growth. So thank you so much to Mark and Anton. Welcome to this afternoon session, and I hand over to you, Anton. Thank you.
Thank you for the kind introduction, the team, and we are just giving Shannon a chance to share there. Thanks, Shannon. Guys, we're extremely excited to share a bit of our learnings, specifically on the SME space. And I mean, this is really from our perspective, what we've seen in the past couple of years. And just the next slide, Shannon. So just a bit about who we are. So Ukheshe is a leading FinTech enablement partner, and we are focusing on emerging markets, but do expand into Africa rapidly at this stage. So we are a B2B enabler, and we help banks, fintechs, telcos, insurance companies, etc., to really provide a digital-first banking and payment service to these customers. So just the next slide, Shannon. So what do we do as Ukheshe? Now, this is really a very interesting slide, but to capture it, we've developed an API, a cloud-based digital banking as a service orchestration layer. We call it Eclipse. So you see the little picture there in the middle, so Eclipse and partner integrations. Through a single, what this basically means, guys, is really in a nutshell, through a single connection, banks, fintechs, telcos, your business that you can see on the left-hand side, basically get access to a host of products and functionalities. These products and functionalities can be cherry-picked. I mean, it could be customized to say you are only looking to get card payments, for example, or card processing service, and you want to use, as a customer, want to use your own KYC and onboarding portal, for example. And that's really the strength of this platform. It's modular, so it gives you a lot of choice in terms of how you want to provision your product and how you want to expose that to your end consumers or customers. So additional to Eclipse, we've done quite a bit of white labeling in terms of channels. So I mean that's the outer circles that you see. We've got chatbots in the social side of things like WhatsApp. We've got progressive web apps. We've got white labeled apps, and then USSD as a channel as well. And all of this hosted really in a PCI DSS level 1 environment. So what that means is any key credentials or information is basically secured store in a secured store. Next slide, please, Shannon. So I think just maybe sorry, Shannon, maybe one back here. So guys, just one additional thing. So we orchestrate our solutions in such a way that it's up to customers to select the channel. So it's so agile. It's such a nice way, and we get quite a lot of customers that comes on that really just looking for one piece of the solution, and that's where we really play. Agnostic of a bank, agnostic of a scheme, agnostic of any processor. So before we jump into the next slide, guys, I actually want to do a bit of polling and really ask you guys to participate in the next 3 polls that we're going to be raising, because it will be impacting and influencing discussions going forward. Shannon, if you can please, please launch the first poll. So guys, there you go. We're going to give you 30 seconds just quickly to select an answer there, and I'll just give feedback in terms of what the actual answer is. So guys, do you see? So 80% of the audience thinks it's, well, 60% of the audience thinks it's 80%, 1650 and then 2490. So it's actually between 80 and 90%, and 80% is the right answer. So it's staggering to see that 80% of the workforce is SMEs worldwide, and that also relates to Africa as well. It's such a massive space and such an interesting space, not only for banks but also for telcos and for fintechs alike. Next question, please. So don't think about global, think about Africa. And I mean, so what's 54 countries in Africa? So and the results. So guys, actually the right answer is 2.6 million, and only 19% selected it. And it must be, so there's a caveat on that. So if you look at that 2.6 million, it's really the formal SME base that there is. I mean, in the informal side, it's probably, I would guess, probably about twice the amount of SMEs. So you probably end up with another 5.2, 5.3 million SMEs. And if you take that, so just let's just concentrate on the formal SME market. So you're sitting with 2.6 million SMEs across 50 odd countries. It's averaging around 50,000 SMEs per country, which is very interesting. Next question, please. This will come in a bit late in our presentation, but we just thought we get all the polling done in the start, just to ease up the experience, user experience. Okay, so you guys got this one. So yes, it's a mix of all. All the answers are true. I mean, that will come forth in the presentation I'm going to be sharing as well, or the rest of the presentation I'm going to be sharing. But really, some of the nice things that you've been seeing going on in the lending space, for example, buy now, pay later, it's really technology and products that was put together to solve for these exact challenges. If we can go to the end of the polling session, thank you guys, and then go to the next slide. So I think, guys, it's very straightforward. If you look at it, 80% of the continent's workforce, there's real challenges in terms of what SMEs are finding: lack of access to funding, you don't get any loans quite easily. I think on top of that, we need to notice that that most of this market is actually not banked, and that proves to be a challenge as well. And all of this really is some of the SMEs, the challenges that SMEs are facing, and traditional POS terminals, acceptance method. It's extremely costly to those SMEs, and most of the decisions that we find is made not really on where the business needs to go or where the business wants to be. It's really the survivalist decisions where they're looking at, from a financial perspective, what can I afford? And sometimes that is, in fact, it's actually career limiting and business limiting decisions, because it does limit you to get access to the likes of, for example, future funding to expand quicker. Thanks, Shannon. Next slide. So, guys, yes, this is quite interesting, and if you look at this, so mobile money and digital wallet solutions, how it's been growing in the past couple of years, and as it stands now, you're looking at an estimated of 46% of all accounts is in the form of a digital wallet. 66% of those transaction volumes are actually digital wallet volumes, and then 64%, give or take, of the transactional value is also on digital wallet. And I mean, it just shows you that the opportunities that there are in digitizing money and finding a way for the traditional and the informal sector, the brick and mortar space and the informal sector, to work together, and finding partners to basically connect those dots, you know. Thanks, Shan. I think you can go to the next slide. So guys, looking at that stats that we just looked at, so I mean, we can further deep dive a bit, and you see, so what are some of the core reasons why people are moving to digital money, or a digital way in terms of transacting? And for us, I mean, the stuff that really stands out is there's really in the traditional brick and mortar space, there's a lack of branches. I mean, 5 branches per 100,000 adults, you really can't serve the market. Connectivity is a big consideration as well. And typically, some of these informal markets don't really have access to great good connectivity. Furthermore, if you look at the informal segment, most of those are not banked. So there is really no, in terms of growth, if their product within the community is not taken up, it's not really a marketplace to drive anything beyond the community. Whereas funding, maybe traditional access to funding or loans, could have given them the space to expose these services on a different platform. So how is SMEs looking at this, and how is this changing the way they're doing their business at this stage? So I mean, SMEs are recognizing the fact that they need to be innovative, and we as a business get quite a lot of interesting conversations and requests on a daily basis in terms of coming from banks, telcos, asking us on, telling this exact problems to us as well, and trying to find ways for these guys to solve for their market, for the consumers. And I think it's more organized nowadays. It's not really, even though the informal sector, they are more organized, they are more savvy in terms of how they operate. They're trying to find solutions to get paid and to pay their end consumers as well, or their suppliers. So it's not only a get paid, but also a pay solution. traditional bricks and mortar space is it's interesting concept, and it's also, even the banks are looking at how they digitize their place to the merchant from an onboarding perspective to to allowing them to transact immediately instead of having to wait for a traditional POS terminal, for example, giving them ways to cash in or get access to those funds immediately, exposing additional offers to them in the terms of, let's call it POS-backed spend linked to lending, for example. All of those are items and new initiatives that's driving the future of the SME and the banking market. And why I bring SME and banking together is because they are really so closely related. All of these is really, let's call it a way of moving funds, a way of banking, a way of securing deposits and being able to secure stock or inventory in the process. So what we've seen is that interaction is becoming very, very important, and that will remain. So the consumer experience is something that is high on the priority list. Chat banking, for example, I mean, WhatsApp as a marketplace is the biggest marketplace globally, but chat banking is something that's growing in the Southeast Asian markets, but to Africa it's still relatively new. Using channels that typically is not reliant on the App Store to be updated frequently, or like Progressive Web App is something that is becoming very interesting and piquing quite a bit of interest in terms of how you take that as a channel and exposing that to your end consumers. And then I think really it's just about accessibility. To get to a point where your products that you put to the market is so accessible, it can be accessed through a digital device in any way or form. So, I mean, buzzwords like, there's a lot of buzzwords going on: soft POS, mobile POS, tap on POS, one-click remittances. All of those buzzwords is really not buzzwords nowadays. It's to some extent, if you look at Africa's market, it's the future, yes. But from a technology perspective, it's and I think the biggest thing, and Mark will touch a bit on that, is really on how you get these services into new markets, is finding a way to consume and work with the payment landscape and regulators in such a way that the product is, or the digital product is fit for market. So I think without further anything else on my end, I've given you quite a good overview on globally and specifically in Africa what's happening in the SME space. But Mark will now be going a bit deeper into how COVID has impacted the SME space.
Everybody, thanks very much, Anton, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And we trust that the sort of discussions that we're having today will be very impactful for you guys. So to sort of just touch off where Anton had ended with regards to the impact that COVID has had with regards to SMEs, the pandemic sparked a growing awareness for the need for flexibility of payments. And this allows consumers and businesses to choose how they want to accept and send payments. So there's been quite a bit of a mindset change on this. Consumers has brought a shift in the way that payments are made and how they want to accept payments. This shift has also caused SMEs to look for innovative ways to make their consumers' lives easier and with managing their own funds. And contactless payments, obviously, we saw was a remarkable sort of uptake during the pandemic process. Digital payment solutions therefore need to be fast and safe, and ensure that SMEs are providing a seamless experience for their consumers and their customers. So the easier and quicker it is to make payment, obviously, the benefits will come through there. Next slide, please, Shannon. So if we just touch on some of the negatives that we as an organization sort of came across on the negative impact COVID had on SMEs. This led to massive losses in consumer demand, which in turn greatly reduced the demand on businesses. This caused severe liquidity and demand shortages within the market. There was exposure to financial risk for both business owners and consumers. SMEs had a decrease or lack of income, which caused financial risk within their businesses, sadly forcing many of these businesses to close their doors. The inability to run a functioning business due to the movement restrictions in many countries. These restrictions sort of paralyzed operations and weakened the financial positions of many of the SMEs. There was a loss of income that was felt due to the supply chain challenges, leading to decreased sales and therefore direct impact on income to the SMEs. And that became an ongoing process with the challenges that supply chain had come across in the industry, which sadly led to losses of jobs in many sectors across the market. Next slide, please, Shannon. Then if you look at the positive impacts on SMEs that COVID has had, the pandemic opened up a number of opportunities for the innovation in all areas, especially in the digital payment space, using digital solutions that make the management of a business easier and more efficient. The disruption that the pandemic caused has positively accelerated the adoption of technology and digital innovations, especially in areas where social and economic problems worsened due to the pandemic. Digitization has drastically improved the operational and management of businesses. As a result, SMEs have been able to accelerate their day-to-day running of their businesses with using these new technologies that have made the processes for them a lot simpler. We have also seen the launch of new business models, the likes of the buy now, pay later services, etc., which are well supported by digital solutions in the market. And we'll slowly see a lot more of these coming into the market for how SMEs are being able to take advantage of this new front of technologies. And we've also seen a marked increase in partnerships and collaboration within the digital payments industry, where technology enablers are joining forces to deliver quick and effective payment solutions for SMEs and for consumers. And I think we'll start to see a lot of that. I'm sure you've all seen a number of announcements recently across social media and various different channels of the various different collaboration processes and partnerships that are being struck between two disparate businesses previously now working together. Next slide, please, Shannon. So we move on to the product development challenges. So following on from the positive and negative impacts that I've mentioned earlier on the SME sector, we as a company identified some key challenges that have further affected SMEs. And the only difference here is that the challenges have opened up opportunities for SMEs as well when it comes to staying ahead of the curve and moving forward with digitization. These challenges obviously are strategies need to be redesigned to accommodate for scalable and cost-effective solutions. Due to the increase in cross-border expansion, globalization becomes necessary, and therefore companies have to expand by marketing and selling their products on global platforms. And I think digital has enabled us to drastically sort of increase market penetration for a number of SMEs. Product development needs to shift its focus to globalization, as I mentioned before. Therefore, the use of cloud-hosted platforms become key and also drastically reduce costs for SMEs. I think we're starting to see a lot of processes running with cloud-based solutions, cloud-based hosting for rapid expansion. And then updated payment regulations and the process of moving money into multiple markets have also increased compliance cost and how this affects the economies to be able to scale. And then lastly, the use of APIs and exploring existing payment rails and engaging in the partnerships have increased product deployment on foreign soil. And I think we'll start to see a lot more of that happening as people get comfortable with working on open API platforms. Thanks, Shannon. If you could just move to the next one. Product development barriers. If we go and have a look at that, digitization has fast-tracked the way payments can now be made and accepted. We have identified in our own capacity as a business 2 barriers that are commonly seen within the product development process. And this is inexperienced technical teams and the lack of project management. So if a development team is not strong or does not have the requisite skills, the consumption of an API can be a tedious task and therefore cause delays in getting projects to a live stage. So the developing and scoping of architectural needs for a solution to be delivered effectively can be time consuming. And we have a strong saying internally within the business that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I think that really will resonate with a lot of businesses that have sort of experienced these challenges with the lack of skills. And then I think the next one, which is becoming more and more prevalent, is regulation and compliance considerations within the businesses. And whilst this plays a big role in the development life cycle of new payment solutions, and although it's not a core component, it can impact on the product development process and go-to-market sort of timing. And then as the regulators are getting up to speed with all of the new products fintechs are bringing into the market, we've seen an increase in the various different licenses required in order to be able to open up and be able to develop into these markets, plus all the additional cost it takes to get these licenses and the time-consuming process. And therefore, that becomes quite a big roadblock with regards to getting product into market, as a result of all these regulations that have now come into place. And then I think if you can just move on there as well, please, Shannon, to our last slide is now how to be competitive. So there are a number of strategies that can be implemented to remain relevant and competitive in today's markets as an SME. And most importantly, creating strategic relationships with partners that enable digital solutions for your organization. And this will keep SMEs ahead of the curve as the development processes move on and more collaboration starts happening in the market. And I think I'll touch on a number of those points now specifically. So collaboration between SMEs and technology providers is beneficial to both parties. SMEs can reduce the cost of purchasing technologies. The old sort of legacy systems are no longer the norm, and using all of these sort of easy accessible technologies allow for companies to promote tech solutions. So therefore we strongly see a lot of collaboration happening in the market, as I mentioned earlier. And then leveraging on your fintech solutions, promoting the use of financial technology to lower the cost. Anton spoke about a number of these fintech solutions, be it SoftPOS, QR, etc. All has a massive impact on how businesses are able to scale fairly quickly at a much lower cost of what it was previously experienced in the past. And then encouraging sort of business innovation. So the introduction of digital solutions, will increase innovation within an organization, and that will then help streamline the productivity of solutions and sort of make the customer journey all that much better. And then developing a well-established and inspired team. So finding the right people is obviously critical. And to find the right people who share the vision and passion will only help the businesses succeed and achieve their objectives. And identify these forward-thinking individuals is key in promoting the digital adoption within an organization. Provide access to data and technology. So once again, upskilling yourself and your employees through innovation labs, digital technology, processes, etc., and exposure to new innovations. And I think we're starting to see quite a lot of these processes happening in the market at the moment. And then to elevate your customer service and customer experience through the adoption of online digital technologies. Given customers a variety of ways for them to make payments, and we've mentioned some of these, SoftPOS, QR, etc., is digitizing and making the process of payment a lot simpler, and the customer journey obviously a lot easier, and that's obviously will help drive adoption. Automating the business processes, be it through the process of delivering digital invoices, payroll services, or simple data capturing processes and things like that from a KYC perspective, obviously all adds to the experience. And then lastly, using the technologies to streamline business processes will give your employees the tools and time to create a memorable customer experience. And I think that's obviously the key to driving successful SME, is the customer experience at the end of the day. And I think that's it from our side. Shannon, we want to move on to some questions now, I think will be a great place to sort of move on to the Anton, if you want to turn on your camera and microphone.
Thank you so much, Mark and Anton, for the presentation and your insights. We do have a few questions that have been submitted in the Q&A function. So Tanvir asks, by how much will FinTech drive economic growth in Africa? I don't know who wants to jump in there and try and answer that one.
I can give it a go. So I do not have a stat readily available, but what we can see from the past couple of big announcements coming in terms of payments, really, it's in all of those announcements, it's been big fintechs that sit at the back and driving the solution into the market. So if I have to give it my stab, I think it's the real benefit of the fintechs in this space is it makes the link between what is available in country, what the consumer is asking for, and finding a way to make that user experience such a great one that it gets adopted quite quickly. So I think it's sometimes underestimate the growth that the fintech will contribute towards the economy.
Great, thank you. So we have another question. Felici, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if not. Given the challenges mentioned, for example, regulations, technical expertise, how can young people start their own fintech startups or find solutions to problems we identify?
So there's a, yeah, you can go for it, Mark. I think we both have very strong opinions on this, so go for it.
No, you can carry on, don't worry. I can chip in if
cool.
you
yeah, so regulation is indeed unique, and it drives quite a bit of decisioning, specifically if you're getting to the payment side of fintechs. It drives quite a bit of specific items, you know. And so for me, there's a few. I mean, MAFH, for example, are launching launching programs and getting students onboarded quite quickly in terms and taking them through what it looks like to run a fintech, what initiatives or what types of jobs is available in fintech. Because I mean, a lot of people think they see fintech and the only thing they think about is you need to be a coder, or you need to be the developer, or you need to be programming, which is not the case. The fintech also has a CFO. They also have people like me and Mark in business development. I mean, I'm an accountant from background perspective, and I'll switch over to a fintech from a corporate to a fintech. So, I mean, the opportunities is limitless. I really think it comes down to the agility of the individual and the will of the individual to basically allow themselves to experience something different.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Good tips. So another question. What are the biggest challenges SMEs are facing when trying to be competitive in today's market?
Mark, you can go for it.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest challenges that they are facing is obviously making it cost effective and quick to market and easy sort of processes for consumers. And then, like we have mentioned, regulations and things like that becoming a challenge in a number of markets, and therefore SMEs need to sort of go through some process. And I think that's where we see the opportunities as us as a fintech to help SMEs, with some of the processes that are put in place already, to sort of then take on that process, take on the opportunity to sort of get to market very quickly.
Okay, great. Thank you. Did you want to add something?
And diversification, I think, of product, I think, is also key.
Yes, so I think one of the biggest challenges, thanks, Mark, is also the fact that you're competing with giants in the market. So if you like for like, I mean, it's now very easy. I mean, in South Africa, we've got Takealot. I mean, also you've got Alipay, you've got the likes of Jumia, you've got the likes of DPO, and all these places really has got marketplaces. So it's twofold. There's really this regulation piece, and aligned to that is that you are competing with digital giants and in big marketplaces, and it's finding a way to find your niche in the market and to make it sticky. And once you get that, it's quite easy to scale if you want to be innovative.
Great, thank you. Another question from Diane. How has digital savviness been a challenge when you launch your digital solutions in Africa?
Well, I can speak to two specific markets. So South Africa specifically, I mean, so we own a QR functionality called MasterPass, and it took about 5 years really to get massive adoption and for users to take out their phone or interact through a banking app and scan a QR code. And now it's for the past 2-3 years, and COVID has brought about quite a bit of that. The interaction on contactless payments has just been massive. So with the pandemic, the need for contactless methods and for people to understand what they are doing and how they can utilize what they have in their hand, and particularly that's a mobile device, has grown exponentially. And so I think digital savviness is something that also you as a consumer want to be in a position that you know that you can easily transact. So it's something that you will invest in to get across the line quite quickly yourself from a skills perspective. At the same time, I do think that your big players in the market, specifically in Africa, like your telcos, your banks, fintechs even, they do have quite a big role to play in educating and creating awareness around the tools available or digital solutions available for the mass market.
Okay, great, thank you. Another anonymous question. How is FinTech helping SMEs? That's a broad one.
Yeah, there's various ways, guys. Yeah, go for it, Mark.
No, I think we try to cover on that sort of stuff. You know, there are various different payment channels, etc., that are coming up, exposing, I think, different marketplaces, as Anton had mentioned. You know, and you know, being able to take a product to market very quickly is obviously what we see as a massive differentiator from the old sort of legacy processes that were out there. And you know, a lot of the development of these quick products and with pulling to APIs, etc., does make that process a lot simpler for them. And you don't necessarily need a massive development team in order to be able to take a product to market, because a lot of the stuff some of the heavy lifting has been done by the fintechs.
Right. Yeah. Swadish asks, why depend on traditional banking, B&M, trying to modernize them when the easiest solution can be a digital bank where the rollout can be faster than modernizing an incumbent? What's your opinion?
Yeah, so I've got a mixed opinion there, in a sense that I do not believe that it's a one solution fits all, and I do believe that banks continue to play quite a critical role. The traditional brick and mortar space continues to play quite a critical role in taking some of these products and initiatives to market. And where I'm coming from is really from a regulation perspective. So we also have the remittance functionality, for example. And in those cases, if you move into Africa, only your traditional banking customers, and there's a mobile network operator, really has the functionality to remit, to move money cross border. So for some use cases, you definitely still need those banks, and the regulators has really not completely adopted their way and their opinion in terms of how they view digital money. And because of that, you sometimes have quite a bit of limitations in terms of use cases you can solve for without the bank link.
Do you want to add something there, Mark?
No, all good. It's well summarized, Anton.
Great. So Kevin asks, how to get SMEs to adopt digital technologies such as a payment gateway where customers have a knack for payment on delivery rather than cash on delivery?
Oh, perfect. So look, there's, I mean, some of the buzzwords I mentioned, they tap on a soft POS, for example, where SME can, well, let's take a use case. Not theoretically, you can have a mobile device that sits in the hand of a courier that is taken with to a delivery, and on delivery you can present potentially 3 or 4 payment methods. You can pull out the mobile device and tell them, hang on, you can tap the contactless card here if you've got a card. Alternative, it can be, okay, you need to do a cash payment, which is quite a big contingency of payments happens in cash, especially on delivery in Africa. But you can also have functionality such as a card being tokenized on a mobile device, for example, the equivalent of Apple Pay or a Samsung Pay, where you tokenize a card onto your device and you can tap that on another mobile device, for example, as a payment method, where the one device then acts as the card and the other device acts as the traditional POS terminal, basically. So there's really there's quite a lot of ways to do payments, except for cash. We also have quick response codes or QRs, and you can use that QR in, I mean, it's really a URL that sits behind the QR. So you can use that QR in such a way that you can, for example, evoke a payment link there on the spot and get a consumer to enter their card credentials in a safe environment. There really is quite a couple of ways to do it and to offer an alternative to the traditional cash to the courier guy.
Yeah, I think I would also add in there, it's an education thing for consumers on the ground as well, to really help them understand what products and services are out there, and generally more education around this space. It's something that's very close to our hearts here at MAFH.
Yeah, and the SME actually has, I actually want to add to it, the SME has quite an important role to play there as well, because when you're arranging for the courier, or the courier company, for example, is arranging for delivery, they can then, before they call, they can actually ask the user, okay, what form of method are you going to tender? Do you know we also have cash or card payments available, that if you've got a contactless card, a card that can do a contactless transaction, for example, or if you've got a card tokenized on the device, you can also pay in that way. So there is different ways to spin a cat, but I believe there's really a lot of awareness that needs to happen from the merchant side or the SME side as well.
Great, thank you. Right, so based on Ukheshe's experience, tell us how you engaged in partnerships with financial institutions, telcos, and other informal sector big partners.
Mark, you want to take it?
Yeah, so that one, obviously, it's quite strategic to the way we've been successful in the market, working with some tier 1 banks, the likes of Nedbank and KCB in Kenya, getting BIN sponsorship arrangements in place that allows for SMEs or tenants, as we call them, to be able to issue virtual cards in market, physical cards, bring on acceptance processes, acceptance obviously driving a lot of digital payment process movement. And so we've been very successful in formalizing those relationships with the financial institutions that are regulated, etc., in order to get tenants to market quickly. Telcos on the same basis as well. We've been successful in launching a very big play in South Africa with a telco, and that was the whole suite of products that was offered into the market there. So we do find the ability to work with the sort of financial institutions that are sort of normally mundane processes to go through, in then enabling that partnership to sort of expand and offer additional value adds to the tenants that we would service.
And Tanvir asks, moving towards fintech would imply the need for higher transparency. What can be done or is being done to ensure that we comply with international regulations and central bank guidelines? And by the same token, can fintechs jeopardize an economy by being blacklisted for money laundering issues?
Okay, so I mean, it might need a bit more background there and exactly just a bit more context. But but I mean, if I look at them from the second piece onwards, so just a comment, that's the transparency that typically, okay, so I'm going to talk from our perspective. So in the markets that we operate, we work very closely with traditional banks, and we do lean on the licensing, specifically when it gets to cross-border transactions. You need to know your customer, all of that. We do rely on the banks quite heavily in that regard. So the same transparency that and scrutiny on a transaction that we process or we facilitate would be in place compared to what a bank on the banking side. So I think that's just the first comment. And then the way if we are registered as a payment service provider in the market or an e-money license holder, in those markets, you need to adhere to certain compliance requirements. So you as the regulated authority will obviously make sure that you are doing the minimum, but also keeping the process as good as possible to ensure that from a consumer perspective, the compliance process is not impacting the user journey, if that makes sense, while still complying on the regulatory side. And yes, I think in some cases, I would not go too far to say that an economy, fintech can jeopardize a full economy. Economy being a widely used term in my view, I'd say, for the country itself. But there is cases where fraud is prevalent, and you need to build in tools to manage that fraud, basically. You do that. I mean, we've got an AI tool that we've built, and we recently launched it, recently about 4 months ago, just into the South African market for a start to see if it picks up fraud. And it was staggering to see the amount of fraud or potential fraud cases that identified and stopped before the transaction even happened. So yes, it's fraud will always be there. There will always be clever guys.
Part of the war of arms, right? Okay, so
exactly. From a money laundering perspective, I need to mention though that there's stringent guidelines in terms of regulating and how your wallets and digital money are regulated in countries. So there's very specific guidelines to ensure that you minimize the potential money laundering risk.
Great, thank you. So Clyde asks, do you have any projects outside of South Africa right now?
Yeah, we've got projects running in 11 markets that reaches from Zambia to Kenya. We've got small projects in Nigeria, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, DRC, and Ghana, Egypt. And Zimbabwe and Egypt, yeah. And soon to be 6 other GCC countries, yeah. Except for Egypt. Yeah.
Okay. How is fintech emerging in other financial markets, capital markets, other than money markets?
You can go for it, Mark.
Yeah, we see obviously from the insurance perspective, we see benefits coming to insurtechs, health, government, etc. Allowing sort of collections of digital payments there is obviously something that we do see coming on stream fairly quickly, and the ability to work with fintechs does make that process a whole lot simpler. And then we also see the other side of it as well, where we see cryptos becoming quite a strategic player within the market, and a whole lot of involvements around in the crypto sector. And I think that's going to sort of pick up a lot more traction as regulation becomes more sort of a fay with how to completely sort of manage the process around cryptos. And then also that's impacts, as Anton mentioned, on cross-border remittances, etc., licenses, being able to sort of support the ability to move money across different markets and to support the diaspora processes within the market.
Okay, thank you.
Anton, we can maybe give some additional context in a subsequent reply.
There we go. Okay, well, so we'll look out for more information on that point then. Okay, Swadish asks, the cost of transaction is still higher in Africa than other markets. How can fintech companies help to lower this cost, especially for SMEs?
Yeah, well, I think that's really where digitizing the money is quite important. Finding a way to basically work with the regulator in terms of putting down solutions that make sense. And I mean, that sounds like a lengthy process, and in some cases it is. I know we've been trying in a few markets to work with the regulator and on how they view very simplistic example and bill payments, for example. And there should be lower interchange linked to bill payments, for example, if you're paying with a card rather than an EFT. So I really think it's a mix of a couple of aspects coming together. And in the sense that, and let me qualify that. So I think, look, by default, your quickest way to still pay for a transaction will always be to almost take out a card and pay, you know, because that would always be the quickest way. But unfortunately, there's quite a big cost linked to that in some cases. So it's really finding a solution that makes sense for the whole ecosystem, even if it can be in some cases a card solution or digital solution, doesn't matter. The way you orchestrate it, it could just be digitally. But it's finding a solution for the ecosystem to be fairly charged, if that makes sense. If there's some way or form that you can take the cost and share that between all players in the ecosystem, it becomes not as heavily it's not that heavy from a cost perspective, and it's only charged to the SME, for example. So that's really how we typically approach use cases, is to look at a way to find a solution that makes sense for the ecosystem, rather than trying to solve for one customer in the ecosystem or one player in the ecosystem.
Okay, great.
It's not a one-size-fits-all answer, and it differs from market to market. Yeah,
it certainly does. You have different rates in different markets, etc., due to some sort of legacy processes that happen in a particular country. And it is something that we are cognizant of, and strongly working towards making it easier and more cost-effective for SMEs to accept digital payments.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. I think that was the last of our questions. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you so much for this afternoon's session. Thank you to all of the attendees who have joined us this afternoon and submitted your questions to Mark and Anton. Given the number of questions, it certainly seems like you got something out of this afternoon's session and enjoyed the insight, so that's great. Mark and Anton, I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and insights with our audience this afternoon. We look forward to welcoming you to future sessions from the Mauritius Africa FinTech Hub. Thank you very much and enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lisa, and everybody. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.